Welcome to the 2011 Amplify podcast, presented to you by the Oregon Ministry Network. Amplify took place March 10th through 12th at Albany First Assembly. The following worship team and band skills workshop was led by Josiah Warnicki.
Becoming a teacher, like a math teacher, you have to know how to do math. And so you have to know how to worship first. And so we're assuming that you guys know what worship is a little bit. Is that a fair assumption? You guys know like who Jesus is? You like to worship him with your whole heart. And
wait, who? Dang it. That's the first step before you can ever be a leader. You know, people always say, how are you going to lead someone somewhere you've never been? It'd be like some of you guys never having been to Portland, Oregon and trying to give us a tour. You'd be lost, right? But we're from there, and we could give you a tour and show you all the cool spots. It's just like that with worship, is that you have to have gone there first to be able to lead others there. And so, I know when we started as a band, that's how we learned to worship. We just get together in somebody's living room or at our church late at night and worship God. So I'm hoping that you guys have that heart. And if you're sitting there saying, man, you know what, we really just don't know how to worship at all as a group, I would challenge you to start first at the throne of God. Go before him and learn to be in the presence of God. But we want to transition to talk today about what it's like how you can take this ability to lead worship, to stand on a stage and try and pull people into a place where they can worship God. We want to talk about some techniques and some ways that you can really maximize your ability on the stage. And, I remember looking on the screen and it said that the skill was worship. But I don't really believe that worship is the skill. The skill is leading people in worship. Okay, you can't teach somebody how to worship God because it comes just straight from your heart. But you can teach people how to lead worship. And so, we wanted to start a little bit with just some things that we've learned along the way. Start from the beginning. Because when we first started leading worship, we were like 15 years old. How many of you guys are in high school, like sophomore, freshman? Okay, we were your guys' age and had absolutely no idea what we were doing. We just knew we loved God, we wanted to lead our friends in worship, and got on that stage and tried and did a lot of trial and error. We did a lot of looking foolish on the stage, but over the years we've learned some tools. And so maybe we could start off with engaging your audience. Now, we have the luxury of traveling all over the world, and we have a lot of bands that open up for us, or we see a lot of youth group worship teams. And one thing that we see a lot of, and maybe you guys can relate to this, and I know that we definitely can, engaging your audience can be the most difficult thing. Especially when it's your peers. I remember sitting in youth group and going, man, these are my friends that I hang out with all the time, and now I'm supposed to be their leader on the stage. And then how very uncool I am, and I'm going to try and look this part of a musician on the stage. And let me tell you, engaging your audience can be very, very hard. And however, it's very, very important to leading people in worship. And here's why, okay? When somebody sees you on the stage, okay, it's not your goal to create glory for yourself. And a lot of times people have that problem with performance. They say, I don't want to be a performer on stage because I'm here to worship God, right? That is true. You're not performing so that you can get glory yourself. However, it is your job to reflect the glory of God. And how many of you guys think if you were to come in and see a worship band, wouldn't you want to think that they are happy about it, that they are joyful, that they have enthusiasm, that they're excited to be worshiping God? But oftentimes we get stuck in that rut where we get up on the stage and our swoopy hair goes over our eyes and we look down at our feet or our music sheets and we just stare and we freeze and our body barely moves except for strumming guitar. And how often does that actually distract people because they're sitting there saying, man, that guy doesn't even look like he wants to be up there. He's terrified, or doesn't even look like he's having fun. How am I supposed to get into it myself?
Yeah, if your job as a worship leader is to lead people into a time of worship. It's not about you getting on stage and I'm going to have my private worship moment here and just play my guitar. You could do that in your room all you want, but when you get up on stage in front of people, your job is to lead. This isn't your private moment with God. yeah, we're still worshiping Him. Yeah, we're still glorifying Him. But your job is to bring other people into that place of worship. And so you have to get to that place of getting away from thinking about yourself and how am I focused on what I'm doing, and get comfortable with how can I bring other people into this place of worship with God. And so, there are major hurdles that get in the way of us doing that. I mean, a lot of that, first you have to get comfortable with just your instrument or what you're playing. I mean, if you're coming on stage and you don't know how to play your guitar part or know the chords of the song, you're going to be so focused on just making sure you hit the right chord or the right note or playing the right beat or singing the right lyric, that how are you supposed to focus on anything else? You know, if you don't know the words, you're going to have to where are the words? What line am I on? Oh my gosh. That's not leading worship. That's trying to learn a song. So, I mean, a big thing, I don't know if you guys noticed, but we don't actually use any music stands, sheet music. We don't have words for us. We learn all our songs. All the worship songs we play, we know them by heart. And so we're not having to be distracted by what's the next chord? How do we start that song? Oh, are you doing that part? Am I doing that part? And we know what we're doing. We've practiced. We've learned it. We've talked about it. We've figured it out. And so when we get on stage, like 95% of our focus is on, let's bring people into worship. It's not like 95%, okay, let's play the song right, and then the 5% bring people into worship. And so, I mean, I want to encourage you guys to spend the time to work on the songs. Practice together. Talk about it. Figure it out. Find out what works and what doesn't work. And then on top of that, learn your instrument. You know, a lot of people, especially I find this with guitarists, they come on stage and they're like, this is time to challenge myself. I'm going to try and play something I've never played before. That is not the time for that. You don't go on stage and lead worship and like, ooh, I wonder if this note works. Nope, not going to do that one again. That is not the time. When you get on stage, it's time you play what you know. And so if you want to get better, spend the time off the stage and practice. And something I was talking about earlier is, if you can go to your max is all the way over here, like this is the best stuff, the most challenging stuff I can play. When you get on stage, let's dial it back like 30%. Okay, don't challenge yourself, do the most extreme, the craziest cool stuff on stage. If you want to get to that point, then get that much better and then dial it back. Because when you get on stage, it's not about trying to push the limits of what you can play or what you can sing, or maybe I can hit this higher note vocally. It's not try that in your room or in the shower or something, and then find out, and then on stage know what you're doing. And so we want to encourage you guys. The reason we can play without music, and the reason we don't hit hopefully too many wrong notes, is because we've just played these songs zillions of times. I mean, just so many times that I can be half asleep and I could still play the song right. So it's not about, for me, it's the challenge isn't how can I play the song right when I get on stage. It's how can we engage people and get all of you guys to feel comfortable to worship God and to encounter Him. So,
yeah. Another thing for engaging your audience, bass players. My gosh, I don't know how many worship sets I've seen where the bass player is sitting in the back and he's kind of standing, his feet are together and his head is just completely dropped down, and he's like 1, 5, 6, and he's just like you can actually see him because he stands like this, he stands way back here, kind of faces inward. Kind of like this, just like this. I'm worshiping God, guys. Just give me a second here. I gotta figure out my bass part. If you're playing, I think one of the biggest things that we've learned is engaging your instrument. Like, this is something that, I'm not going to say that God has given me a gift to play, but it's something that I can use to glorify God with. And if I'm just sitting back here and I don't know the songs and I'm staring at the worship, the lead sheet, and I'm like, okay, I got C, O, G, E minor, okay, and you're just staring down there. The people in the audience are going to go, wow, that guy doesn't know anything about playing the bass or any of the songs. So if you're playing, get your head up, engage your audience, look people in the eye.
And it looks like you don't care.
Right.
If you're
you may care a lot, and you're trying to play it right, but if you're just staring at a sheet, your face kind of sinks, and you're like, you're kind of deep thoughtful, and you just look angry.
When we first started our band, we used to see pictures of us during worship services like that people would take, and we looked straight up angry, like, because we were just so focused on that, and we were realizing that we weren't really portraying the heart that we wanted. And here's some practical things. Okay, I know a lot of you guys have been leading worship together, and you'd like some very practical tools. Number one, the thing that everybody wants to do in worship is close their eyes the whole time. And some people like to say, well, it's because I'm just really focusing my heart on worship and I just want it to be. A lot of people are just terrified to look people in the eye. Okay? You're terrified of looking at your friends. You're terrified of seeing what's happening out there because you're thinking, what if they don't like it or what if they're not worshiping? Here's the reality, you guys, is that eye contact makes a big difference, okay? It shows people that you are into what you're doing, okay? And so, don't be afraid to look at people. I mean, there is obviously moments where it makes sense to close your eyes and give God all of your attention, but the reality is, as a worship leader, you need to engage people with your eye contact. In fact, as a band, we even have kind of a rule. Depending on how many musicians you have in the very front, we actually have a rule that, like, if I'm in the middle, my goal is, like, these people. Okay, and I'm going to engage them. I'm going to look at them. I'm going to smile. I'm going to have my entire demeanor pulling them in. But if I am the only person doing that, and every guitar player and every drummer and everything, they're just looking down or closing their eyes, I am the only one responsible to look at everybody in the entire room. Okay? And listen, if you're at a worship service and no one's looking at you, and it's very easy to get disengaged. So Josh goes, hey, I'm going to take this part of the audience, and I'm going to engage them. And then Joel goes, I'm going to engage this part of the audience, okay? So if you're a bass player, you might be thinking, or a guitar player, and you're off to the side, and you're not in the very center, you might be thinking, okay, my job is just to play the right notes, and that's it. I would say no, it is each person's responsibility in the band to engage the audience.
Yeah, and that happens not just with eye contact, but just like body posture and where you're facing. If I'm standing over here, and this whole time I'm just kind of playing guitar this way, I'm kind of like, just kind of shunning people over here. You know what I mean? Like, my focus is the wall. That's what I'm paying attention to. And so, and then it's the same thing if you're kind of bent over, just like, my focus is my feet. And so your job as somebody on stage is to exude, you have this like sense of needing to exude confidence and I am leading. And that shows in eye contact, that shows in posture, being square on with people, not kind of standing like I'm going to protect myself. You can engage people. If I had a teacher in class or whatever, and the whole time they just kind of like, today we're going to learn about the Revolutionary War. I mean, I'm going to be asleep in like 30 seconds. And I think we kind of, especially as people who aren't the worship leader, as like guitar players or even drummers or bass players, we kind of like, okay, that's the worship leader's job to like talk to people and engage people and be confident. And I can just kind of hide behind my instrument or the piano. But it's every single person's responsibility to lead. Whether or not you have a microphone to talk into, whether or not you have the loudest or most prominent instrument, your job is to lead with your posture. I mean, we've seen worship teams where they have 15 backup singers. And which is fine. That's not what we do, but they have 15 backup singers. And if all the backup singers, even though I probably can't hear most of them, because there's like still the worship leader and all this other stuff going on. If the backup singers are like, praise Jesus, I mean, I'm going to just be like, this is not fun. I don't want to worship. They're not excited about worship. It takes every single person on stage needs to express, we're going to worship now. It's everybody's job, not just the worship leader's job. And so I just want to encourage you guys that way too. It's part of, you get to set the tone when you're on the stage for the entire night, okay? If you aren't going to be excited about it or be willing to be a little foolish sometimes, I mean, there's a lot of times we take a big leap and we say, okay guys, we're going to jump together, and what happens if no one does it and it's just me? I look pretty foolish up there, just jumping around on the stage. And that happens sometimes. It's happened.
But you have to be willing to put yourself out there and be embarrassed for the sake of pulling people in, okay? You're going to have to be the craziest, the most excited, and the most passionate person in the room if you really want to open up that door to others, okay? Now, one very important thing is the set list, okay? This is an important part of the worship leading craft, okay? And some of you guys probably love it. Some of you probably hate it. There are times I absolutely hate picking. Recently, we did that last week. We always do that one. You guys know what I'm talking about. Dang it, why do we always do that one song? But the reality is that's a big part of what we do. Now, I'm the one in the band that's primarily responsible for picking out set lists, okay? And here's my rule of thumb, okay? And it almost seems a little bit like a formula, and always be open to the Spirit of God in any worship service. But we always do up-tempo songs first. That's the way that we always do it, and here's why. When somebody enters the room, okay, think about your friends that come in at youth group. They're coming like cold. They've just been doing homework. They've been at school. They've been at sports practice, whatever. They're just walking into the room. They haven't been preparing like the worship team has, praying together, practicing. So they walk into the room and they're like, youth group. You know what I'm saying? Or the worship service. It's your job to say, okay, we're going to wake up here. We're going to get engaged. And so we always I normally pick 2 up songs. Okay? I start with a really up-tempo song and follow up with a second one. And then we have what we call mid-tempo transition songs as a band. Okay? It's a song that opens up the door for you to go into the passionate, slower worship. Okay? And that's a hard song to pick. We actually don't have as many of those. There's a lot of those powerful, everyone's at the altar raising their hands songs. And there's a lot of let's jump up and down songs. But it's those transitionary ones where it's like, okay, it's a mid-tempo that will pull people in, but isn't this drastic, like, we're jumping around the stage, I am free! And then it's like, used to be for create. You have to realize that there's a flow to the night, okay? And so, and how I normally do it kind of depends on your youth group and how many songs you pick, but I normally go from up and then kind of go down and then bring it back up with passion at the end. Okay, and it kind of depends on the way that your service runs. But really spend some time thinking about the set. What I like to do is I sit down with a list of songs that I'm thinking about doing, and I picture the night. How is this going to go? How is the transition going to work between each song? Where do I want to end up? What is God saying about tonight, and where do we want to go as a worship team? And that also brings up another important practical tool, transitions between songs. That is the hardest thing. We struggle with that to this day, okay? Because what happens if you have a song that's in a completely different tempo in one key, and then the next one is a completely different tempo in a different key? How are you going to make that transition not awkward? Because let me tell you, there is one thing that can kill a worship set, and that is really great song, really great moment, dead silence.
5 seconds of silence.
10 seconds, looking around, switching the capo. There's that awkward, maybe somebody coughs in the back. And the drummer is looking over like, when do you want me to start? When do you want me to start? And they're looking over, he's like, now, go, stick it out, come on. And then the drummer's like, oh, and then, I mean, by the time all that's happened, everybody who was in it is kind of like looking at you guys like, what's going on up there? Some practical things. Keyboard players, a synth can be great. A low synthesizer or strings. I mean, like a song ends and you just hold down a string, okay? It fills the dead space and tells people that something's about to happen next,
yeah.
Okay?
Bass player's just letting the last note just sustain as either the guitar player is capoing or the piano player is figuring out the synth. You can just let your note sustain, and as even in a key transition, if you let it sustain to the end, like as that's fading out, they can come in with a synth and catch it back up. So that'll take up quite a few seconds of dead space.
I wanted to say really quick, think of a couple questions, because as we get towards the end, what I'd like to do, because really we're just kind of talking with you guys as if we like all went out to coffee to talk about leading worship, okay? So what I would love to do, if you have specific questions for us, if you're sitting there saying, hey man, we noticed you guys do this, and I want to know how do you do that? How do you make that work? That kind of thing. Some practical tools that I'd like to share before, like just get them out there so you guys know. Hand signals can work, but what I hate is like when the worship leader's like, doing the song and then it's like, chorus, and holds up a C, and then it's like, verse 2, keep going, and they're like, because people out in the audience have no idea what you're doing, and they're like, what is there's just all this like hand commotion going on.
Yeah, I think my favorite hand signal for you is just
Stop. So you can, as a team, work together on making certain signals. You know what I mean? You can do those. But what I also think is really important that people forget is you guys have to listen to each other as a band, musically. Okay? Because most of the cues that I give the band, saying, hey, we're going to do this chorus again, or hey, we're going to like bring it down into a quieter moment, is mostly done musically and with the tone of my voice. Okay? You got to listen to your leader and learn how do they, when they want to build up the song into a more powerful moment, what do they normally do musically? You know, what do they do with their body posture? Yeah. They can tell from the way I look on the piano whether I'm going to build up to a bigger moment or bring it down.
It's like, oh, maybe I should start playing.
That's true. And most of them are really obvious, but sometimes we're so busy looking at, and here's going to be another big one, and some of you guys are going to hate this, but if you possibly can, get rid of the sheet music. Get rid of the chord charts. Okay? And some of you guys are sitting there going, oh my gosh. But here's the reality, okay? What I hate more than anything is when there's like 5 people in front of the stage and they've all got this massive music stand with papers on it that are falling off in between songs, and it's like, okay, we ended the song.
Well, that's another part of the transitions.
Everybody's changing the page, and they're like trying, it's in the back of the book, and they're shuffling through, and you're waiting for people every second. You know what, you guys? It is not that hard to memorize a song, okay? People do it all the time. In fact, most of you guitar players are at home learning all of these cover songs on the guitar, and you know them perfectly, and you can play them for anybody. We can do the same thing with worship. Okay, we can learn the songs, and the reality is once you don't have these things to look at and to flip and you're trying to remember the lyrics to things and you're trying to remember the chords, if you just know them, it's going to free you up so much. You don't have to look at anything. You can engage your audience. You can engage each other. You can spend more attention listening to each other than to the piece of paper in front of you. So, get rid of lyrics and chord sheets if you possibly can. And it's okay to mess up a lyric a time or two at the expense of not having those suckers.
Yeah, I think getting rid of just distractions in general. Like maybe next time you guys are working on your worship set or practicing or whatever, just pay attention to, okay, what am I focused on mostly here? Like for me, there's certain pedals that during worship set I don't really use because I have to pay attention to them too much. And so is that I have a tremolo pedal, and so it kind of makes it kind of, the sound kind of waver back and forth. But if the tempo is not set quite perfectly, it becomes super distracting for me. And so most of the time I just don't use it. Not because I couldn't get it just right and maybe kneel at my pedal board and just adjust it during the worship set. But reality is most people won't notice that except for me, and it's going to distract me from really engaging people. And so there's different distractions for different instruments and different roles. I mean, certain people, it might be the sheet music that's distracting for you. Certain people, it might be it could be certain chords that you just don't know the chords. For some people, it could be certain people in the audience that you're distracted by. And so find out what you're distracted by and start working on getting rid of the distractions. Because when you can come on stage, not be worrying about that thing or that thing or that thing, you're able to really do your job, which is engage people and get people involved in worship and help them worship God. And so get rid of distractions. And that's most of worship leading gets affected by distractions. I mean, I don't know, how many of you were here last year? So do you remember when I think the power went out a couple times, or the sound system turned off a couple times? So there's moments where there's things that just happen that are outside of your control, and those are distractions. Some of those you can't help. But there are plenty of things that you can help. There are plenty of distractions you can get rid of, and so work on getting rid of those. And so when random things come that you can't control, you're not so flustered by that distraction combined with all your other distractions that now it's just the worship set's over. You're like, I'm done. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Right. So get rid of distractions. Find out what those are and get rid of them. So that'll help you guys a lot.
Another thing that's really important to remember, too, is that by having these gifts that God gave you, you have this ability to really do a lot of awesome stuff at your church and youth group, all that kind of stuff. You've been called to be a leader if God has given you those things. If you're in this room, it's because you're part of a worship band and you have an amazing ministry. And here's the thing. When you guys step on this stage, the whole reason we're talking about the presentation side of things is that we're trying to show people, I have confidence in the fact that God has called me to do this, and I'm here to lead you guys with me in worship. And I know a lot of times when you're younger or when you're just stepping onto the stage, you don't have the confidence of having played a million times up here and you're super comfortable. It can kind of almost look before you start like you guys don't really, like you're kind of just flustering around up here. You're kind of playing some random notes, and then all of a sudden the worship service starts, and there's kind of this lack of, we're up here on purpose. Does that make sense? And we did it all the time, and sometimes we still do it. But the reality is when you guys step on that stage, it's no longer time to just kind of goof around or just kind of, you're on stage with a purpose. Let me tell you, when you go into a worship service where the band is ready to say like, hey, we're here on purpose, we're going to stand up there and we're going to engage people, we're going to stand at the front of the stage, look people in the eye, and really pull them in, it makes a big difference. And so think about that. When you get on the stage, it can be from everything from the way you dress, from the way, if everybody's got like beanies on over their heads and they're like looking down and they're like wearing like swim trunks and like a random turtleneck, why are you on stage? Why are you wearing that?
And who dressed you?
And if you wear swim trunks and a turtleneck, I'd be super confused. But the fact is, when you guys step on a stage, just like any person who gets on a stage, a pastor, a performer, a speaker, anybody, they do it on purpose. They say, I want to look the part and I want to act the part because when you're on a stage, you're elevated for a reason and people are going to be looking at you. And even though our goal is to turn the attention to God, people still look at you, and you don't want your appearance or the way that you act or your posture to be a hindrance to that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are afraid that they're going to be prideful. If I look confident and excited and I'm not closing my eyes on during the worship set, I must be prideful and think I'm so cool. And there's a difference between confidence and pride. Just because we can stand up and engage and move around and be happy and be confident on stage doesn't mean we think we're all that. It's all about Jesus. That doesn't mean you need to hide in the corner and have nobody see you. Your job is to reflect Jesus, to be a shining light, to reflect Him. Jesus doesn't say go out into the world and be dim and don't let people really see you and don't be confident and be shy. No, He says go out boldly, go into the world, preach the gospel, go boldly. And so when you get on stage, be confident. Don't be afraid of your friends kind of giving you a hard time about it. That's not the point. Then it is about you. If you're just worried about people giving you a hard time about it, then you're thinking about yourself. But if you're going on stage saying, I'm going to worship God and I'm going to help other people worship God, and you're doing it confidently, that's the opposite of pride. If you're turning people to Jesus. And so don't confuse confidence with pride.
Right.
And don't assume that being timid and shy and hiding in the corner is humility, because that's a lie. That's not true. Get on stage and be confident and reflect Jesus and let everybody see it. That's great. That's what you're supposed to do.
Perfect. Well, in 1 second, we're going to do a couple questions, because does anybody know when this one ends? Maybe we should do some questions right now. 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Yeah, you have a question.
It's a fake piano. Good job. You win a prize. Gold star. I just got tired of the X stand with the keyboard on top. I just had done it for so many years, I decided to do something more interesting. Greg's List. Couple quick things to remember when you guys are up there on the stage. One, it makes a big difference too if every member, even people who don't have a microphone, are singing. You'd be amazed at when the drummer is randomly singing along and doesn't have a microphone, how much it can pull people in. Yes. Yes. Something that we started doing, which I would highly recommend, it takes some time to get used to. We use a click track all the time, even with our drummer. And for those of you guys who don't know, when it's in our ears, so we have in-ear monitors. If you don't have in-ear monitors, sometimes only the drummer can do it. But having a click track can keep you accountable to the time signature.
Yeah, and it can be expensive, to do wireless in-ear monitors and all that kind of stuff. There are some cheaper alternatives where you can do wired in-ear monitors and just use even basic iPod headphones if you need to. And so if you guys have questions about that, just come talk to me or something. We can
yeah, as far as you guys not having one right now, timing is really difficult for everybody. I know that even Even drummers have trouble. I mean, all of us have trouble with that because it's a difficult thing to stay on time all the time. But I would say try to sink into a groove. Try not to rush it or try to push each other or save each other, but try to sink into a groove together and not. A lot of times it can be one person rushing the rest is what can pull you off time.
Yeah, and even if you can't use a metronome or a click track during the worship set, during practice, there's nothing wrong with having a click or metronome going on where everybody can hear it. So if you practice with a metronome or click, then you'll be more likely to stay on time when you're during the actual worship set. So,
Yes. When we're nervous.
Just throw up in the back room before.
We just throw up and no. Nerves are going to be a big part of it, okay? Especially in their earlier years. I mean, we've played thousands and thousands and thousands of events, and so it's easier for us now to be on a stage. But in the beginning, when you're nervous, remember why you're doing it, who you're doing it for, okay? And remember that, you know what? Everybody else is looking at you, and you might think, oh, they're going to be judging me, and really, they're just excited that you're up there. Okay, and the more confidence you can show, the less you're going to have to feel those butterflies. And I mean, I get butterflies even before shows or before concerts sometimes. But when you get out there and you really realize, I'm here not because I'm trying to look cool or try to impress people. I'm here to glorify God. They go away so quickly. Any other questions?
What do you play? Bookstore. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. We don't really use feet or like tap on ourselves. I mean, we kind of just use our instruments to. I mean, we're just playing to the beat, and so.
I know for acoustic too. Like if you're not super comfortable with strumming patterns and stuff, and if you're kind of still getting used to it, you can kind of throw yourself off by not really having confidence in your strumming. So practice a lot to the point where you kind of can get into that rhythm. I mean, I have problems staying on time. Just naturally, I'm just bad at it. So I save myself with a click track, but.
Yeah, and even with like an acoustic guitar, you could play to music. So find a worship track or something, play it, and just put it on a stereo system or whatever, and just play guitar to it, and just get used to playing to stuff. So
back there. Oof. Can we tell you that later, since it's not as relevant to this? Yes.
If you hit a wrong note, you just hit it twice, and then it makes it seem like you did it on purpose.
Don't do that. We've played with guitar players before that will hit the wrong note and then just decide, I'm going to pretend like I meant it, and they're like, you're like hitting it tons of times, like thinking, oh, this is artistic.
It's awful.
Bad idea. Really, the reality is just slough it off and keep going, okay? Don't pay too much attention to it because it can distract you, it can throw off the whole thing. Don't let it stop you. I mean, like, imagine what would happen if you hit a wrong note and then you're all of a sudden, oh, wait, stop, everybody. All right. You know what I'm saying?
And 75% of the time, even though you guys know you messed up, people in the audience probably didn't even notice. A lot of times people aren't even aware. There are times where I'm like, oh, man, I messed up a couple times. And then the most people come up to me and be like, oh, you did such a good job. That was awesome. Like, didn't you hear that stuff? No?
I mean, there are every once in a while an exception where everybody's in the wrong key and the beat's horrible and you lose a drumstick. And you know what I mean? There's like those times where you just say, okay, you just laugh about it. Okay, guys, listen, sorry about that. Let's do this for real. But for the most part, if you hit a wrong note on a guitar or if you miss a beat on a drum or something, keep going because the purpose is to pull people into worship, not to execute the most perfect performance of that song. Any other questions? If you guys need to go, we're kind of basically done, but if anybody has some questions they'd like to ask us, especially if you're going to be performing today and you're like, hey, we need to know something about how to do this, come and talk to us. Thank you guys so much for your time, and we'll just stick around for everybody who can stay, but if you need to leave, thank you guys.
Thank you for listening to the 2011 Amplify podcast. For more information on the Oregon Ministry Network and our events, please visit our website at oregonag.org.